don't know about you, but sometimes I just want a simple, easy project. These little 2-inch painted magnets are exactly what I need to do on an afternoon when I just want something fun, but not too stressful and doesn't require a whole lot of materials. It was based on this inspiration from this Andy Warhol print that I've had for a long time. I like the simple grasses in the background. Looks like it was originally a photograph, and then the silkscreen flowers on the top. And I used that inspiration to create these little magnets for this tutorial. Very simple, easy to do, and doesn't require a lot of hard to find supplies. All right, let's start with supplies. I found these little mini canvases. They're 2-inch square canvases. These were Artist Loft brand from Michael's Craft Stores. And if you're lucky and hit them on the right day, they also do sometimes carry them already pre-gessoed with black. But if you can't find them pre-made, you can do as I've done here with this one and simply paint a white one with your black paint before you get started on the next step. So it doesn't matter if you have the white ones or the black ones, but we're going to be working on a black background. You'll need some type of plate or palette or some type of non-porous paper to put your paints on. You can see that I've already put my black paint there on this one. Some brush cleaning water and a paper towel or an old rag for keeping your brush dry between paint colors. You're going to need some brushes. I'm using a fairly wide brush to paint my black background. I'm not even sure I can read anymore what this one is. It's a number 10 acrylic brush. And then for the design and pattern, I've got a couple different sizes. This is a number 4. It's called a filbert. It has a rounded tip. And then I have this little bitty angled brush. This is a 1/8 inch angled brush, so it has a very small angled tip. And then I have this teeny tiny, it's a black gold 20/0, whatever that means, but it's very tiny, and I'm going to be using that for the dots in the center of the flowers. I have some disc magnets that I purchased at the craft store, and my handy dandy hot glue gun for applying the magnets. As far as paint colors, I'm using Turner acrylic gouache. You can also use regular acrylic paints for this project. So I have black to make my backgrounds, since I'm not going to use a black canvas. Some white, so you can see that I'm using some white in this, and I'm using the light green and the regular darker green. I'm going to use the orange and the, let's see what else, I have the opera red, which is really what I would call a hot pink. I'm going to use the yellow deep, which is this yellow right here. And I'm going to, see, I already have the orange, and I'm going to use the violet. So those are the colors that I'm choosing to use. So you'll see them. So this one, they all use the greens and the white for the background, for the leaves, and the black. And then I did yellow flowers with orange centers, although you can do them any way you want. I did the pink with the violet, and then I did orange with yellow and violet with pink, so I simply reversed my colors to keep them going. Sometimes these little canvases are actually wrapped in plastic, so I have it on the back side, and I'm just using my X-Acto knife to break that seal a little bit and peel this plastic off. Sometimes they're not sealed, but in this particular package, they were all completely sealed. I'm going to use my black paint, and I'll give you a little trick for doing sides and top that make it easy and keep at least most of the paint off your hands. What you want to do is hold this between your thumb and forefinger, support it with your other fingers, and first paint the edges all the way around. Just turn it, paint the edges. Like so. then once the edges have been painted, you can set the piece down and it's much easier to paint the top. You will want to put 2 coats on. I'm going up and down this way. And I find that when I paint the canvases that were previously white, no matter what color I'm using, I like to put a second coat on. So when this is dry, I'll go completely over it in the opposite direction so that it covers better with the paint. So I'm going to go paint all these and let them dry, and then I'll be right back to show you how to do the flowers. Painting the flowers on these magnets works really well if you do them all at once. That way you're using each color in its layer as you go around. So I'm going to start by demonstrating how I put the underneath layers, which are the leaf-like effects. And it's a very, very simple thing to do. I'm going to need some white. I'm going to use my light green. And my darker green. And I'm going to use this rounded brush. What I'm going to do to start with is put some little tiny white dabs roughly where I'll place a flower, like so. So I'm just going to do little dots, kind of to get my bearings for where the 3 flowers are going to go. That way I can do my leaf effects out from the flowers. So I'm just going to go and do some white, just some white lines, if you will, out from each of those areas that I said were going to be a flower, almost like putting little petals out and around. Doesn't matter if some are thicker, darker, longer, shorter, because they're going to just become background. And the nice thing about both gouache and acrylic, this is acrylic gouache, so it is a form of acrylic paint that can be used with more water to create watercolor effects. But they both dry very quickly. If you're using regular acrylic paints or craft acrylic paints, those will all work. Any of those types of things that you have. All right, so there's my white layer. I'm going to clean my brush good because you don't want acrylic paint drying on a brush. That will totally ruin it. And then I'll use my towel to make sure all the paint is out. And now I'll give this just a few minutes to dry, and then we'll add the greens. However, if you're feeling a little bit impatient, a hair dryer or a heat gun if you have one, I don't, so I'm just going to use a hair dryer on the low setting and dry my paint. Okay, we'll do the green the same way, starting with your lightest green and go in between and even a little bit on top of your white areas. So let some white show through, but get the green leaves in place as well. If your white is still, whoop, I even had a little white there. If your white is still a little wet in spots, that's really not a worry. It'll create some slightly lighter greens, which will be just fine. And you notice I'm not getting real particular about placement. You just want to fill that background area. Leave some black showing, leave some white showing, and get the light greens on. And then we'll go through the same process. Clean your brush, let your greens dry, Dry your brush. Use the hair dryer if you want to speed things up. Okay, while I was looking at this, I decided I really wanted more of a lime green, just little bits of it in here before I add my darks. So I've taken some lemon yellow. It's a different color from the box. It's lemon yellow. It's a very light, bright yellow to give me kind of a light, bright lime green. And I'm just going to dab little bits of it into the corner areas just to add a little brighter touch in a few spaces. Like so. And then I'm just going to swish my brush off onto my plate and add little bits of a darker green for contrast. Not nearly as much, just little bits here and there to give a little contrast. And you could skip that step entirely if you like the brighter colors. Just go with the light green out of the tube and then add a little light yellow to it, unless you have some lime green paint. All right, now I have my leaves in place. So I'm going to give my brush a good cleaning. And these you want to have dry really well, because now we're going to put the flowers on top, and it would not look good if we had wet paint in any area. So I'm going to let these dry for a good while, probably about 30 minutes. Okay, paint is dry, so I'm going to start on the flowers. And I'm going to use the Opera Red, which is really more of a hot pink. So squeeze some of that out. And I may end up needing a little bit more, but I'm going to start here because the acrylics dry so quickly. I'm using the orange. Deep yellow. And violet. And again, I'm going to work one color at a time, same technique. And I'm going to use a small angled brush to make my flowers. I'm going to start with the yellow because it's the lightest color. I tend to like to start that way. Here's my little dot. And really simply, little circles. And I did 5 little circles per flower. Overlap them, and then fill in the center. I will do 2 coats. This is my big one. For most of these, I'm doing 1 large flower and 2 smaller flowers. Not worried about perfection. Just 5 little round petals and color in the middle. This one I kind of lost the dot. And there I have my yellow flowers. And I'm going to put that aside to dry. Clean my brush, swish it in the water, clean it off, and move to the orange. And repeat the process. and my violet. Now I'm going to have to let those all dry while I clean my brush, and then I'll repeat the process and give each flower a second layer of color once these are dry, because you can see there's not real good coverage initially. So I'll go over it a second time. If you're using tube acrylics, you may find that depending on the brand and the thickness of your acrylics, you might only need one coat. But with these fast drying gouache paints, I do find I have to use 2 layers. When you're ready for the second layer, if you found that your paints have dried a little bit, just add a little bit more of each of your colors. I'll just do a little bit to refresh my color. The pink actually looks good. My other ones have dried up a bit. And then you're going to just repeat the process. So I'm going to paint the second coat. It's really easier. I don't want to hold it in my hand. It makes it a little bit harder to put the paint in place. And this second layer is going to give you much better coverage. You can go on pretty thick. A little bit of thickness will add a little texture, which can be very nice looking. Last step is to add the flowers, the middles to the flower, little centers. And I'm using a teeny tiny brush. You can use a small brush. You can even use a toothpick or the end of a brush. Lots of different ways to do this. But all I'm going to do is load some paint on my brush and just dab a few dots in the center of each flower. Not a particular number, just whatever looks good in the center of that flower. So there's some little orange dots there. And then I'll reverse it and put little yellow dots in my orange flower. And you might, when you're using the yellow on top of another color, you might need to load your brush a little bit more to get your color to show. Or you could use one of the darker colors, that would work as well. There's my yellow. Then I was using purple in my pink. I can see where yellow could look really good on the pink as well. Little dots there. Little dots. And my last one, my purple ones. Yellow, I could see where yellow would look really nice on the purple as well. But I'm going to stay with my pattern and use the pink. All right, there we go. And while my paint is drying, I'm going to heat up my hot glue gun for the next step. Another thing that you can do before you put the magnets on or after, you can spray the surface with something like this is a Krylon Hobby and Craft clear gloss paint that you can put on top. It will protect your paint, and it will also add some shine if you choose the gloss finish. You can also get a satin finish or a matte finish. It isn't essential that you do this because any acrylic-based paint is permanent, but it is something that you can do if you want to add that little bit of shine or if you know it's going to get heavy use. And my hot glue gun is looking pretty good. So this part is super easy. I'm going to take a magnet, put a little dab of hot glue right here in the middle, press the magnet into place with a little wiggle, and we're good to go. These magnets are a little bigger than I bargained for. I ordered them online. My original magnets, you can see, were much smaller, so you don't really need these heavy-duty ones. I really thought I was getting the small ones when I placed the order. But that's okay. They'll hold quite nicely. And there you go. And here they are, all finished, magnets on, ready to use. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. And I hope you'll come back to my YouTube channel and check out some of my other arts and crafts tutorials.